Untouchables or the Children of India's Ghetto by Babasaheb Ambedkar. Part 1, Chapter 5, Unfit for Human Association. The untouchables, as explained in the last chapter, are outside the Hindu fold. The question, however, remains how far removed are they from the Hindus? What respect, what consideration do the Hindus show to them as human beings, if not as Hindus? Without an answer to these questions, one cannot give a complete picture of the life of the untouchable. The answer is there for anyone who cares to note it. The only difficulty is how to present it. There are two ways of presenting it, either in the form of a statement or by citation of cases. I will adopt the latter. I do not wish to vary the details of many cases to the reader. I will cite only a few which are quite telling. The first case is from the state of Madras. In the year 1909, an appeal was filed in the Madras High Court by Mr. Venkata Subba Reddy and others, all of whom were Hindus, against their conviction by the magistrate against Section 339 Indian Penal Code for causing obstruction to the complainant and his party, who were also caste Hindus. The judgment of the Madras High Court, which gives the facts of the case and illustrates the position of the untouchable vis a vis the Hindu, is a very striking manner. The judgment is therefore worth quoting. It is as follows. The appellants, Venkata Subba Reddy and others, have been convicted of wrongful restraint for having caused certain P word to stand in the public street in the vicinity of a temple with the object of preventing the complainant from conducting a procession from the temple through the street. It is found from the complainant deterred by fear of the pollution which he would have suffered had he passed near the P word, did not conduct the procession, and that the accused maliciously caused the P word to take up their positions in the street with the sole object of deterring the complainant from going where he had a right to go. We do not think that the accused has committed the offence of wrongful restraint. In our opinion, this act did not amount to an obstruction within the meaning of section 339. The P word were no obstruction. In fact, there was nothing to prevent the complainant from taking his procession past them, and they had a right to be where they were. And it is not suggested that their presence was intended to cause fear of physical injury or any fear that anything would happen to the complainant except the pollution of the procession by their presence. It was not the presence of the P word, but the complainant's own disinclination to go near them which prevented him from going where he would. It was his own choice which kept him from leaving the temple, as Mr. Kuppaswamy Iyer put it. It was with his own consent that he remained there, and there was no fear of injury within the meaning of the penal code, which would prevent that consent from being a free consent. If it were otherwise, it would follow that a person in the position of the complainant would be justified in complaining of wrongful restraint against any P word who, having been lawfully in the public street on his own business, refused to move when directed to remove himself to a distance, knowing that if he remained, the complainant would be deterred by fear of pollution from passing near him. It is clear that there would be no wrongful restraint in such a case, and we think it makes no difference that the P are posted by the accused. We therefore set aside the conviction and sentence and direct refund of the fines if paid. The case is very illuminating. There were in this case two parties. Venkata Subba Reddy was the leader of one party. Both parties were caste Hindus. The quarrel between the parties was over the right to take out a procession. Venkata Subba Reddy wanted to stop his opponents from taking out a procession and did not know how best to do it. It struck him that the effective way would be to get a few untouchables and ask them to stand on the road and hold fast to it. The trick succeeded, and his opponents could not dare to go in the procession for fear of being polluted. The fact that the Madras High Court gave a judgment to the effect that making the P word stand on the road does not constitute obstruction in the legal sense of the term is another matter. The fact remains that the mere presence of the P word was enough to drive the Hindus away. What does this mean? It means that the Hindus have an absolute feeling of revulsion towards the untouchables. The next case is equally illuminating. It is a case of an untouchable school teacher in a village in Kathiawar and is reported in the following letter. When appeared in the Young India,
a journal published by Mr. Gandhi in its issue of 12 December 1929. It expresses the difficulties he had expressed in persuading a Hindu doctor to attend to his wife, who had just delivered, and how the wife and child died for want of medical attention. The letter says, on the 5th of this month, a child was born to me. On the 7th, she fell ill and suffered from loose stools. Her vitality seemed to ebb away and her chest became inflamed. Her breathing became difficult and there was acute pain in the ribs. I went to call the doctor, but he said he would not go to the house of an H-word, nor was he prepared to examine the child. Then I went to Nagar Seth and Garasia Darbar and pleaded them to help me. The Nagar Seth stood surety to the doctor for my paying his fee of 2 rupees. Then the doctor came, but on condition that he would examine them only outside the Edgewood colony. I took my wife out of the colony along with her newly born child. Then the doctor gave his thermometer to a Muslim. He gave it to me, and I gave it to my wife, and then returned it by the same process after it had been applied. It was about 8 o'clock in the evening, and the doctor, on looking at the thermometer in the light of a lamp, said that the patient was suffering from pneumonia. Then the doctor went away and sent the medicine. I brought some linseed from the bazaar and used it on the patient. The doctor refused to see her later, although I gave the 2 rupees fee. The disease is dangerous, and God alone will help us. The lamp of my life has died out. She passed away at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. The name of the untouchable school teacher is not given. So also the name of the doctor is not mentioned. This was at the request of the untouchable teacher who feared reprisals. The facts are indisputable. No explanation is necessary. The doctor, who, in spite of being educated, refused to apply the thermometer and treat an ailing woman in a critical condition. As a result of his refusal to treat her, the woman died. He felt no qualms of conscience in setting aside the code of conduct which is binding on his profession. The Hindu would prefer to be inhuman rather than touch and untouchable. The third case is taken from Prakash of 23rd August 1932. In the village of Jagwal, Tehsil, Jafarwal, on the 6th August, a calf fell into the well. Ramahasya, a Dom by caste, was standing nearby. He at once jumped into the well and caught the calf in his arms. On 3 or 4 men coming to help, the calf was safely rescued from the well. The Hindus of the village, however, raised a hue and cry that their well had been defiled and victimized the poor man. Fortunately, a barrister had come to the scene. He soundly rebuked the men who were tormenting Sadhuram and thus brought them to their senses. Thus, the man's life was saved. Otherwise, no one knows what might have happened. What is important? Saving of the calf by the untouchable and is polluting the well, or the death of the calf and saving the well from being polluted by the untouchable? From the point of view of the Hindu, it would be better if the calf had died. Then an untouchable, even for the purpose of saving a calf, should have polluted the well. Another case of similar sort is reported in the Bombay Samachar of 19th December 1936. In Kaladi, a village of Calicut, the child of a young woman fell into a well. The woman raised an alarm, but none present dared to go down the well. A stranger who was passing by jumped into the well and rescued the child. Later, when the people asked the benefactor who he was, he said he was an untouchable. Thereupon, instead of being thankful, the man was fully abused and assaulted, as he had polluted the well. How unclean and unfit for association and untouchable is to a Hindu be evident from the following incident reporting in the Adi Hindu of Lucknow for July 1937. It says, an employee of the Madras Homes Company who claimed to be one of the high caste persons passed away recently. When at the cremation ground his pyre was set fire to, his friends and kinsmen threw rice on it. Among these friends, unfortunately, there was an untouchable, an Adi Dravida of Madras. He also joined in the throwing of the rice. At this, the high caste Hindus rebuked him for defiling the pyre. This led on to a heated argument, and the upshot was that 2 men were stabbed in the stomach, One of them died at once upon reaching the hospital, and the condition of the other one is said to be critical. There is one other incident, more telling than this. On the 6th of March 1938, a meeting of the Bhangis was held at Kasarwadi, behind woolen mills, Dadar, Bombay, under the chairmanship of Mr. Indulal Yadnik. In this meeting, one Bhangi boy narrated his experience in the following terms. I passed the vernacular final examination in 1933. I have studied English up to the fourth standard. I applied to the schools committee of the Bombay municipality for employment as a teacher, but I failed as there was no vacancy. Then I applied to the backward classes officer Ahmedabad for the job of a Talati, village Patwari, and I succeeded. On 19th February 1936, I was appointed a Talati in the office of the Mamlatdar of the Borsad Taluka in the Khera district. Although my family originally came from Gujarat, I had never been in Gujarat before. This was my first occasion to go there. Similarly, I did not know that untouchability would be observed in government offices. Besides, in my application, the fact of my being an insured was mentioned, and so I expected that my colleagues in the office would know beforehand who I was. That being so, I was surprised to find the attitude of the clerk of the Mamlatdar's office when I presented myself to take charge of the post of the Talati. The Karkun contemptuously asked, "Who are you?" I replied, "Sir, I am Manachwad." He said, "Go away, stand at a distance. How dare you stand so near me? You are in office. If you were outside, I would have given you 6 kicks. What audacity to come here for service." Thereafter, he asked me to drop on the ground my certificate and the order of appointment as a Talati. He then picked them up. While I was working in the Mamlatdar's office at Borsad, I had experienced great difficulty in the matter of getting water for drinking. In the veranda of the office, there were kept cans containing drinking water. There was a waterman in charge of these water cans. His duty was to pour out water to clerks in office whenever they needed it. In the absence of the waterman, they could themselves take water out of the cans and drink it. This was impossible in my case. I could not touch the cans, for my touch would pollute the water. I had therefore to depend upon the mercy of the waterman. For my use, there was kept a small rusty pot. No one would touch it or wash it except myself. It was in this pot that the waterman would dole out the water to me. But I could get water only if the waterman was present. This waterman did not like the idea of supplying me with water. Seeing that I was coming for water, he would manage to slip away, with the result that I had to go without water, and the days on which I had no water to drink were by no means few. I had the same difficulties regarding my residence. I was a stranger in Borsad. No caste Hindus would rent a house to me. The untouchables of Borsad were not ready to give me lodgings for the fear of displeasing the Hindus who did not like my attempt to live as a clerk, a station above me. Far greater difficulties were with regard to food. There was no place or person from where I could get my meals. I used to buy bhajas morning and evening, eat them in some solitary place outside the village, and come and sleep at night on the pavement of the verandas of the Mamladar's office. In this way, I passed 4 days. All this became unbearable to me. Then I went to live at Jentral, my ancestral village. It was 6 miles from Borsad. Every day I had to walk 11 miles. This I did for 1 month and a half. Thereafter, the Mamlatdar sent me to a Talati to learn the work. This Talati was in charge of 3 villages, Jentral, Khapur, and Sajpur. Jentral was his headquarters. I was in Jentral with this Talati for 2 months. He taught me nothing, and I never once entered the village office. The headman of the village was particularly hostile. Once he had said, "You fellow, your father, your brother are sweepers who sweep the village office, and you want to sit in the office as our equal? Take care, better give up this job." One day the Talati called me to Sejpur to prepare the population table of the village. From Jentral I went to Sejpur. I found the headman and the Talati in the village office doing some work. I went, stood near the door of the office and wished them good morning, but they took no notice of me. I stood outside for about 15 minutes. I was already tired of life and felt enraged at thus being ignored and insulted. I sat down on a chair that was lying there. Seeing me seated on the chair, the headman and the Talati quietly went away without saying anything to me. A short while after, people began to come, and soon a large crowd gathered round me. This crowd was led by the librarian of the village library. I could not understand why an educated person should have led this mob. I subsequently learnt that this chair was his. He started abusing me in the worst terms. Addressing the Ravania village servant, he said, "Who allowed this dirty dog of a B word to sit on the chair?" The Ravanias unseated me and took away the chair from me. I sat on the ground. Thereupon, the crowd entered the village office and surrounded me. It was a furious crowd, raging with anger, some abusing me, some threatening to cut me to pieces with a dharya, which is a sharp weapon like sword. I implored them to excuse me and to have mercy upon me. That did not have any effect upon the crowd. I did not know how to save myself, but an idea came to me of writing to the Mamlatdar about the fate that had befallen me and telling him how to dispose of my body in case I was killed by the crowd. Incidentally, it was my hope that if the crowd came to know that I was practically reporting against them to the Mamlatdar, they might hold their hands. I asked the Ravania to give me a piece of paper, which he did. Then, with my fountain pen, I wrote the following on it in big bold letters so that everyone could read it. To the Mamlatdar Taluk Barsad, Sir, be pleased to accept the humble salutations of Parmar Kalidas Shivram. This is to humbly inform you that the hand of death is falling upon me today. It would not have been so if I had listened to the words of my parents. Be so good as to inform my parents of my death. The librarian read what I wrote and at once asked me to tear it off, which I did. They showered upon me innumerable resorts. You want us to address you as our Talati? You are a B word and you want to enter the office and sit on the chair? I implored for mercy and promised not to repeat this and also promised to give up the job. I was kept there till 7 in the evening when the crowd left. Till then, the Talati and the Mukhya had not come. Thereafter, I took 15 days' leave and returned to my parents in Bombay. There is another facet of the social outlook of the Hindus towards the untouchables which cannot be neglected. This outlook is best illustrated by the study of the following cases. In the Alfzal of 8 September 1943, it was reported from Nasik on 1st September that the Hindus of a village attacked an Achut family, tied the hands and feet of an elderly woman, placed her on a pile of wood which was subsequently set on fire. All this because they thought she was the cause of the cholera in the village. The Times of India of August 29, 1946. The H-word quarters of a village in Karia district are reported to have been raided by caste Hindus on suspicion that the H-word were causing the death of cattle by witchcraft. It is alleged that about 200 villagers armed with sticks raided the H-word quarters and tying an old woman to a tree burnt her feet. Another woman is reported to have been belabored. The H-word evacuated the village in panic, but Mr. Chota Bhai Patel, secretary of the district H-word Sevak Sangh, who was apprised of the incidents, has brought back the H-word to the village and applied to the authorities for their protection. A similar incident is reported from another village where H-word are alleged to have been severely belabored. The matter did not end there. There was a recurrence of violence in which the whole body of Hindus are reported to have taken part in general assault on the untouchables. The news appeared in the Bharat Jyoti of 22nd September 1946, which is reproduced below. 5 H-word, including one woman, was seriously injured when a crowd of villagers attacked them with dhariyas and lathis in a village in Borsad Taluka in Karia district, according to a report received by the secretary of the Borsad Taluka, H-word Sevak Sangh. The attack was a sequel to the death of about 7 buffaloes, which the villagers attributed to black magic practiced by the H-word. The injuries and the injured have been sent to the hospital. Police rushed to the spot and some persons have been arrested. The villagers, it is learnt, are threatening the H word that if they make any complaints to the authorities, they would be burnt alive. Such incidents often occur in Karya villages, and the district magistrate of Karya has issued an instruction to all police and other executive officers to take strong measures against such harassment of HO. The tale told by these cases is clear and simple. No comment is necessary. To the average Hindu, the untouchable is not fit even for human association. He is the carrier of evil. He is not a human being. He must be shunned. The end.